I saw the movie Thunderbolts. And did I cry? Yeah, I cried a couple times.
I was really shocked with how deep this movie was.
Right.
Considering I just thought I was walking into a Marvel movie.
The only way out is through. And I think there's been times in my life where I'm like, well, through what?
They're suffering, whether that be anxiety or depression, is just something that I feel I need to do.
How do you go through it when you feel alone and frustrated and or traumatized?
He was carrying it all alone and he didn't know how to deal with it. Every single character you see has gone through something that's very difficult or traumatic, and it's shaped who we're seeing that they are today.
Yeah.
As these underdog superheroes.
I should just stay down here. I just make everything worse. Welcome, Nicole. Thank you for joining.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Of course. I'm excited to do this, and I'm glad that you were open-minded to it because, for context, I saw the movie Thunderbolts. And did I cry? Yeah, I cried a couple times. At least ugly cried one time, and for personal reasons. And I think just a lot of the mental health stuff, my own journey, anxiety, etc. And it just seemed like, man, it would be cool to talk to someone who really understands, like a therapist who might be able to unpack this a little bit more.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's my only agenda. So maybe we could just talk about you and your background and
sure.
Get there.
So I am a marriage and family therapist, and being a therapist is just something that I've pretty much known that I was going to be since I was a kid. I've just always been a natural empath. And so I just gravitated towards this field and helping others through their suffering, whether that be anxiety or depression, is just something that I feel I need to do. And it's sort of my calling in a way. So it's very fulfilling.
Wonderful. How long have you been doing that for?
Well, I've taken a little time off because I've been raising my kids, and now that they're a little bit older, I'm kind of jumping back in and relaunching my career.
Okay. Exciting. Yeah. Should we plug anything? Do we have a website that we want to talk about? Relaunching?
I'll let you know.
Okay.
I'm working.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Cool. When it's
Thank
time.
Yeah.
Okay, well, do you want to dive into talking about the film?
Absolutely. Yeah, I would love to.
Okay. I mean, spoiler alerts.
Yeah.
People. Because I think we'll just jump right into it. But
sure.
Well, I'm a nerd. I'm just going to throw that out there. Like all the Marvel movies, up until the last, 6 years or so, they kind of have been mediocre. But before that, I was like lining up. And this one was the first one where it's like, holy fuck, they did it finally. Like, this is a really good movie, I felt.
Yeah.
And important. And so I don't want to like lead you too much. What did you think? Are you a nerd like me? Or, like,
I don't know. Yeah. Okay. So I don't know if I'm a nerd, but I would say that I'm very analytical, and I took so much away from the movie. And I will say that I was really shocked with how deep this movie was.
Right.
Considering I just thought I was walking into a Marvel movie that would obviously be entertaining and have some depth, but nowhere near the amount that we saw.
Yeah. Where do you begin? Like, what for you? Maybe.
I mean, how about we begin with, the first scene of the movie is pretty much like, you're seeing the main character, Yelena, and she's on the edge of a building, and she's basically talking about how her life has no purpose and she's bored, and she's clearly exhibiting a lot of signs of depression. And you're really seeing that she maybe wants to end her life, and she actually jumps, and you kind of gasp as a viewer, and then until you see that she has a parachute. But that's only a small depiction of her mental health crisis and journey throughout the film. So it definitely pulls you in right away, and you're like, this is something different.
Yeah, I assumed she would have the parachute. I didn't have the moment. Oh shit! Like, is she leaping to death? Like, because weird. Actually, I think I saw a behind the scenes thing, so I knew it was coming. That might have been different
Okay, I came in blind, so I
Yeah,
had no idea. And I mean, when she was talking about like her guilt over her sister's death and all of that, it was just very loaded immediately.
for me, like I could identify with all of them so much more
Absolutely.
than the old days where it's like all phase 1, 2, and 3 of Marvel or four, I don't know which fucking phase we're on 4.
Yeah.
It's the aggressor superhero that's here to kick
Right.
ass, and the bad guy is the bad guy, and he needs to
Yeah.
go down. And this
Sure.
was all about like, no, we're all kind of fucked up.
It's very nuanced, right? Because even the villains have these underlying just really good qualities, right? Where they're actually, a lot of them are really good people that have just been through really horrible circumstances. And it sort of shaped them into what you're seeing as, these evil qualities or so forth. But yeah, it's much more complicated than what meets the eye.
Yeah, even like kind of the main bad person, which was I forget her name, but she was like the head of the evil corporation, who was like,
Right. The character Julia Louis-Dreyfus played. Yes.
yeah, Val,
I believed. Yeah.
yeah. So because even her, like the smart mechanism they used, like these flashback scenes, you're like, okay, she's I guess a bad person, but I see what happened to her in her
Right.
childhood. Like it's all just a childhood trauma film.
Every single character you see has gone through something that's very difficult or traumatic, and it's shaped who we're seeing that they are today.
Yeah.
As these underdog superheroes. Not at all what you would expect a superhero to be.
Right. But maybe it's the superheroes we need at this.
Absolutely, because it feels real, right? Like they're approachable because they're flawed.
Yeah, totally.
And we can identify ourselves in them because there's not this level of, unattainability. Like they're so perfect and there's nothing wrong.
Right. Yeah. And it's kind of like, yes, they've all fucked up and also.
And they've all had a lot of people that they trusted really fail them.
Yeah. Fair.
And hurt them. And so, hurt people, and you really see that.
How much did it feel like as you were watching each character? Were you like, I don't know, assessing real world scenarios like this is that, this is this?
Yeah. I mean, I honestly had a pretty much immediate empathy for all of them. So I think the movie did a really good job with that.
Yeah.
Because nothing was clear in terms of what these characters had been through. And then when you got to see their storylines, I mean, each one from Yelena and her guilt with her sister's death, the Black Widow, and then we later find out, obviously that she wants revenge for her sister's death. And then we have even John Walker, who's saying like, oh, he has a great life and everything's fine. We later find out that actually his wife left him and took their child. And so they all are dealing with so much pain.
Yeah.
And that's making them really isolate themselves and unfortunately not trust any of the other characters, especially in the beginning. I mean, they are set out to essentially like destroy each other in this first mission until they figure out that they're all going to be killed unless they band together and try to escape. So that was immediately them sort of figuring out like, okay, we have to depend on each other.
Yeah, fair. There was kind of this story of shit, like a literal story of shame, like the shame room.
Yeah.
What did that make you feel in terms, like, I guess
what was really interesting about the shame room is that they were interconnected. And so each character had to essentially go through all these different shame rooms that led to basically their current feelings of emptiness and this void that we later learn about. And you really see just how deep and dark their suffering is in these physical shame rooms, which clearly just depicted how awful the things were that happened to them.
I don't know. You see that and you're like, yeah, everyone has their own little shame room, don't they? Like, does
Absolutely.
everyone have one? Like, you look at social media and it's the opposite of shame rooms, especially Instagram. It's like, here's the best thing about my life today.
And I think, honestly, I'm so glad you mentioned social media, because I think that obviously, even though this movie doesn't touch upon this, I think that the messages are so much related to what's happening in social media, because there really is an epidemic of loneliness and feeling disconnected. And it seems like each one of these, anti-heroes are really alone on an island. And that's sort of how society is really trying, not trying, but it's sort of what's happening because of social media. Like, we're leaning on each other less and less, and we're more isolated behind these screens, and we're really losing that human connection that's so vital.
Yeah. They were trapped in this little shame room in their worst moment inside of them. And so like, it feels like childhood trauma where a lot of people are just operating from this room that they don't know that they're inside of. So like, each character is here, but still very much in that shame room. You know what I mean?
Right. And it's really interesting that you get to see that, oh, this is why they're acting this way, right? Like, even Bob, who is considered, at first, we're not really sure like why he's there, because he doesn't seem like a superhero at all. And later we found out that, Val, I guess, experimented on him and wanted to be able to control him. And obviously that really blew up in her face, because he was very unwell and he was dealing with a lot of really complex mental health struggles. And you see that it really stemmed from him being a young kid and his mom being abused and him not being able to save her. Mm-hmm. And I think that led him to this life of just feeling worthless and hopeless, and that he didn't have a place in the world, which led to him feeling like he was battling this void.
Yeah.
And he couldn't handle the void. So the only thing he knew how to do was basically like make everyone else suffer along with him.
Yeah. Yeah. That the part that definitely broke my heart was there was a scene and he was like, I should just stay down here. I just make everything worse. And then you see that child flashback where the mom's like, you just make it worse, and it connects that. It's like, Bob.
Yeah, 100%. And so it's like, even though there's this part of him that doesn't want to do any harm, right, it's like the good part of him is battling the, evil part of him, but he doesn't have the coping skills. That's really what it comes down to. He's trying to handle it on his own. He's isolating himself the same way Elena has with her own shame. Mm-hmm. And because of that, it really snowballs, and this void becomes, a physical representation of depression. And he is essentially like putting a dark cloud over all of Manhattan.
Yeah.
And taking away all of its light. And it reminds me of when Yelena's dad, Alexei, who provides some comic relief to this movie. But, when he saw her the first time, that he said, your light is gone. It's dimmed. Yeah. And I really don't think she got it back until she was actually able to save Bob. And in saving Bob, I really believe she saved herself.
Totally. It kind of seems like they all had that moment, like
absolutely
saved the little girl with the building, and he was like, I'm back. But then she walked away. Luckily, didn't die. She was just in the shame room, I guess. But that was an intense moment too.
That was very intense. Yeah.
You mentioned coping skills. Can we unpack that a little bit? Because it'd be sure. Great if there's some kind of like, okay, if you're feeling this way, here are some things that you could do,
Absolutely. I mean, I think that first of all, I want to say that it's so tied in with shame. And the reason they have so much shame is that they're holding it all inside. So I would say the most important thing is actually letting go of that need to handle the problem by yourself, because it's actually not possible. Everyone needs somebody, and we need to let people in. And so I think that's the first step in coping, is opening yourself up and asking for help.
Yeah. And I guess that's what therapy's for, in theory.
Yeah,
A safe.
absolutely. And listen, even if, until you're in therapy or if whatever the circumstance is, you can still lean on your family or your friends or your community. There's a lot of different ways of getting support, but clearly if you're struggling with a lot of mental health challenges, then therapy is definitely the way to go.
Yeah. And well, it's just so stigmatized, I think. And one of the things that I think we're trying to do with this little podcast is make it less stigmatized. Like I'm probably being too open, and I'm like, what am I doing right now? But I think if you talk about your shit, it makes it a little bit easier for other people to talk about their shit and like
I 100% agree. It becomes less charged also.
Yeah. And especially as like, I think a man, and maybe this is changing now, but I don't know, because I'm old or whatever, but for people my age, we were raised in this place where it's like, still like, you're a dude, don't cry. Here's the color red. Here's fire trucks, and these are the prescribed ways you're allowed to be. And that is clearly shifting. And I think we're like my age demographic is kind of like on the cusp in the middle of that.
So, yeah. And I feel like in some ways there's also like an overcorrection happening sometimes as well, right? Like not every single emotion needs to be talked about at all times. Like there is this gentle parenting approach, which is wonderful, but it's again, like it's nuanced, right? I think that there needs to be something that's a little bit in the middle. Yeah. And I think that boys should absolutely be encouraged to talk about all of their emotions and to cry, because the reality is they just get stuffed otherwise.
Yeah.
And they come out later in maladaptive ways.
Well, and they make that joke in the movie too, when they're trapped down in the basement or whatever. Yelena's, you just shove it down deep. That's all you got to do. And like,
right. Like buried under the rug. And that's also, it's interesting she said that, because it's a cultural thing as well. Like I actually have to be first generation American and my family is Ukrainian. And as immigrants, like you're really taught to shove it down because it could always be worse, because look at what our ancestors have had to go through. So it's like, what are you complaining about?
Yeah. I mean, do we want to go down that?
No, I'm just saying
like thing, but
there's just so much. There's so many layers.
Yeah. I've got a good friend who always says, just rub some dirt on it, because like,
sure.
He's first generation American too. And I'm like, fuck, I can't, I'm trying, you know what I mean?
It doesn't work.
Right. Well, maybe it works for some people,
I don't think it does. Yeah. I think that even though it might be working for them at that point, there always comes a, you know what I mean? Like we're all going through different phases in life. And I think that in a harder phase, you're going to probably need to open yourself up to doing things a little bit differently.
Yeah, I think that's fair. That's reasonable. All right, I'm going to tell him that.
Good, you tell him.
Fuck your dirt strategy. It doesn't work.
Right. Well, it might be working right now, but what's the backup when it stops working?
Yeah, that's fair. I want to talk about the quote unquote bad guy who's not really the bad guy. And I was so happy that it didn't go the way that you would have assumed it would go, that it's like, oh, he's crazy. We got to kill him. Good. We killed him. He's dead. That crazy fuck, and that's every movie, superhero movie. Right. And the moment where I ugly cried was when he was like beating the void and being taken over by the void, and they were like hugging him.
Yeah, that was really beautiful. They were like really embracing him so tightly, and essentially they were just saying, right, with their bodies, like, we got you. Like, you're not alone. We have you.
What's the therapeutic translation of that? Because I know, like, obviously, like, what you resist persists, and what you fight, you give energy to. And like,
right.
I think those are things you pick up. But the opposite of that is, why did it work when everyone hugged him? Why did it go away? Like, from a therapeutic perspective?
I really think it's because he unburdened himself. He was carrying it all alone, and he didn't know how to deal with it. So he was constantly trying to run away from it. And in that moment, when he really came face to face with his depression and he realized, oh, wait, I'm not alone. I have people that are around me that are caring about me, that are protecting me. And I think that's when he was able to see the light.
And I don't want to get into like diagnoses of him, but
sure.
What would you say is sort of, was he really experiencing obviously childhood trauma, but we talked.
Yeah. I mean, there seemed to be like some obviously like PTSD from his childhood trauma. And there also seemed to be maybe some like delusions or, it was hard because he was also, right, he was like under this medical experiment that essentially also completely screwed up whatever was happening inside of his brain to try to turn him into essentially this puppet to basically do whatever Valentina wanted. And it didn't work when he realized like, oh, wait, I don't want to be told what to do. Like, I want to take agency over these brand new powers, and he didn't know how to handle them.
Yeah. Fair. I mean, she says that the assistant was like, you give Captain America super soldier serum and you get Captain America, but you give this guy's
not Captain America. This guy is more complicated.
Right? Because he wasn't evil though, clearly at any point.
No, he wasn't evil, but he was, he had damage and he had emotional scars that weren't dealt with, and he had absolutely no tools, and he didn't even know where he was. He had amnesia.
Right.
He didn't remember what happened to him. I mean, that in itself is incredibly frightening.
Right.
And the next thing he knows, he's with these random superheroes that are maybe trying to kill him / we don't really know and why he's there.
Yeah. Well, when he pops out of the thing and he wakes up, I guess, for the first time in that room, he's all goofy and happy and fun. And you can tell it's kind of like as he starts to remember who he is, he gets more complicated and more depressed. That amnesia was like maybe released him of his burdens for a while. And they come back.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that in a way, like they all had a little bit of that forced amnesia, right? Where they're just choosing to ignore all of these horrific things that happen. And unfortunately, that just, as you can see later, is not possible.
Yeah.
You can run away from your problems and try to not face certain parts of your psyche, but in reality, that's what causes so much shame and sadness and depression. And until you face it, you really can't move forward. You have to go through it.
That's what they say. The only way out is through. And I think there's been times in my life where I'm like, well, through what? Like, I don't know what through it is. How do you go through it when you feel alone and frustrated and or, traumatized? Like how do you find a way through?
I think it's really hard. I think you have to be willing to first open yourself up. And I think sometimes that can look very different. That can be asking for help from a loved one. That could be saying, okay, I'm ready for therapy. That could be, utilizing self-care techniques that can help you kind of, depending on, the severity, like maybe it's just working out at first and deciding you're going to have a routine or be more social or do things that are taking you out of your head more.
Yeah.
But I think it really looks different for everyone.
It's fair. Generally get out of your fucking head, though, is a good...
Basically, get out of your head and ask for help and accept the help.
Yeah. Like, we can go back to the movie, like, these people are here in this present moment, but they're looking backwards at these traumatized experiences. And when you see them now, and I'm going to get spiritual for a minute.
Sure.
You think about, like, this idea of, like, if all that exists is now, like, Ram Dass, Eckhart Tolle type stuff. I don't know if you're into that at all, but like the power of like Buddhist, everything. Like the only thing that exists is now, right? Now is it. There's no past, no future. And so when you look at someone now, like, for example, there's that moment when Yelena's like talking to her dad and like everything's going to shit and she's walking away all mad. She's like, fuck this team. Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry for all the shit and fucks. I'm a mature adult.
Okay. It's your podcast. You get to do it.
That's it. That's how it goes. She's talking about, I think the mistakes or something. I don't remember what word. And he's like, we've all made mistakes. And she's like, but I've made so many, and like, carrying all of it,
right.
That
she has so much guilt.
So much guilt. That's just guilt.
I mean, in my opinion, I think that she had a tremendous amount of guilt and she didn't know what to do with it. And I think that at first she thought that by pouring herself into this career of being an assassin, which is what she was trained to do, that she would be able to ignore basically having any sort of real human feelings or emotions and just kind of putting them to the side. And when that didn't work, she started drinking a lot. And that also didn't work.
So how do you get rid of guilt other than, what we've talked about, open up?
You face it. I don't know if you necessarily get rid of it. I think you have to understand it, and I think you have to face it, and I think it's a long process. I think that ultimately a lot of guilt has to do with forgiving ourselves, right? And we can't forgive ourselves if we're trying to escape what we've done.
Can we go deeper on that?
Sure.
How do you mean? So you said we can't forgive ourselves if we're trying to escape what we've done.
Meaning, if you're not going to be willing or able to sit with your own shame, right? Your mistakes or things that you've done that are really tough to think about and things that you really regret. I think that sitting in that shame is so uncomfortable that we do everything we can to avoid it. But the only way we're going to be able to come out of it is really to sit in those rooms, right? Like the movie depicted, like those shame rooms. You do have to essentially face it and kind of come to terms with it in a way. I'm not saying guilt necessarily will go away, but it will lessen. Or maybe we find a way to just put it on a shelf for now, right? Like it's still there, but it's just not this soul crushing feeling that makes us not experience all the joy in life and all of the good things we've done.
Right. So sit with it is the way to do it for now. Just to allow it.
Allow it, exactly. Give it space instead of pushing it away.
Yeah, I think that's, again, social media, like anything but sitting down and sitting with my feelings, the sensations in my body. Like, no, I'm just going to walk away. I'm going to scroll. I'm going to doom scroll. That way I don't have to acknowledge what's happening on the inside.
Yeah, and I'm going to distract myself with what's happening around me with other people so I don't have to think about what I've done
I'll engage in some online outrage about something.
Sure.
To release.
Yeah, you can be a keyboard warrior.
No. We need more of those. Lord knows. Okay. Is there anything we didn't touch on?
I think that what I want to touch on is the message of the movie. Really, to me, was everybody needs somebody. No one can go through life alone. And as soon as these characters really figured that out and really did join together and create this sort of dysfunctional family, if you may, they became their strongest and healthiest.
Yeah.
And they were really able to do good.
Totally. And where do you think it could go from here? Because they can't make this movie again, not the way they made it,
They can't make this movie again, but they set it up, right? That these are your new
Avenger.
Not Captain America, but what was it that they're going to be?
The new Avengers.
Yes, the new Avengers. Correct.
Yeah. But then in the post credits, I don't know if you noticed that, or in the credits, they were rolling all these images of like people weren't buying it. They were like, are these really the Avengers? Like this is that, which is interesting because that the end where, and I kind of like that too, because they were just compromised continually, which I think is how it feels a lot too, where like, in theory, that should have been their moment where they broke through the other side and they were like, yes, we're healed now, but not quite. Because you're still compromised. You're still in shit. Like,
yeah,
this person gave you exactly what you wanted, but now it means you're kind of working with this person that you don't at all.
right. But also, like, this is the beginning of their journey, right? Like, they're just now facing their pain.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. So to continue
in real life, I would say, obviously, facing your pain does not mean you're going to save a city. This was a very extreme depiction of the good that can come from healing your mental health struggles.
So true. And healing, I think, maybe to put a cap on it, like, it's this, there's no happily ever after. I think happily ever after kind of fucked us as a society. Like, this idea that, okay, I'm healed now. I figured it out. I won't experience emotions or sadness or feelings because I took care of my shit. So I'm good, from here on out.
Right. Which is just another way of avoiding your feelings, right?
Right. Yeah. Is that spiritual bypassing? I always hear that term, but I'm not sure what it means.
I mean, it might be. I'm not very familiar with that term, but I wouldn't say it's healthy. I think that you need to experience both the good and the bad feelings, right? That's what makes us human.
Yeah. And I guess it's about having the coping mechanisms to experience bad feelings and not.
Yeah. And know that you're going to be okay.
Yeah. So true. Nicole, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.